Welcome back. So I'll be talking about a case. It's the state of Missouri versus Celia, an enslaved woman, and the case was tried in 1855. And I named the title "The Enslaved Woman Who Killed Her Enslaver / Rapist." And this information is taken from a website that details the case. So we'll start with the background. Around 1820, Robert Newsom, this is the victim, and his family left Virginia and headed west, finally settling land along the Middle River in southern Callaway County, Missouri. By 1850, according to the census, Newsom owned 800 acres of land and livestock that included horses, milk cows, beef cattle, hogs, sheep, and 2 oxen. Like the majority of Callaway County farmers, Newsom also owned enslaved people, 5 male slaves of 1850. During the summer of 1850, Newsom purchased from a slave owner in neighboring Audrain County a 6th slave, a 14-year-old girl named Celia. Shortly after returning with Celia to his farm, Newsom raped her. For female slaves, rape was an ever-present threat and far too often a reality. Over the next 5 years, Newsom would make countless treks to Celia's slave cabin, located in a grove of fruit trees some distance from his main house, and demanded sex from the teenager he considered his concubine. This man was a middle-aged man. Celia gave birth to 2 children between 1851 and 1855, the second being the son of Robert Newsom. Sometime before 1855, a real lover, another one of Newsom's slaves named George, entered Celia's life. On several occasions, George stayed, quote, at Celia's cabin, although whether for a few hours or an entire night is unknown. In late winter, either February or early March of 1855, Celia again became pregnant. The pregnancy affected George and caused him to insist that Celia put an end to the pattern of sexual exploitation by Newsom that continued to that time. George informed Celia that he would have nothing more to do with her if she did not quit the old man. Again, this is a case here where the victim is being blamed. She's enslaved. Like, if she had a choice, George, don't you think she'd pick you and not this old sexual predator? Come on, brother. Celia approached Newsom's daughters, Virginia and Mary, asking their help in getting Newsom to quit forcing her while she was sick. It is not clear whether either of the Newsom daughters made any attempt to intervene on Celia's behalf, but it is known that the sexual assaults continued. So there are girls her age that she could appeal to, but they didn't care. In desperation, Celia begged Newsom to leave her alone, at least through her pregnancy, but the enslaver was unreceptive to her pleas. On June 23, 1855, Newsom told Celia he was coming to her cabin that night. Around 10 p.m., Newsom left his bedroom and walked the 50 yards to Celia's brick cabin. He's intentional. When Newsom told Celia it was time for sex, she retreated into a corner of the cabin. He advanced toward her. Celia then grabbed a stick placed there earlier in the day. Celia raised the stick, and about as large as the upper part of a Windsor chair, but not so long, and struck her master hard over the head. Newsom groaned and sunk down on a stool towards the floor. Celia clubbed Newsom over the head a second time, killing him. After making sure he was dead, Celia spent an hour or so pondering her next step. Finally, she decided to burn Newsom's body in her fireplace. She went outside to gather staves and used them to build a raging fire. Then she dragged the corpse over the fireplace and pushed it into the flames. She kept the fire going through the night. In the early morning, she gathered up bone fragments from the ashes and smashed them against the hearthstones. Then threw the particles back into the fireplace. A few larger pieces of bone she put under the hearth and under the floor between a sleeper and the fireplace. Shortly before daybreak, Celia carried some of the ashes out into the yard and then went to bed. In the morning, as Newsome's family was growing concerned about Robert's disappearance, Celia enlisted the help of Newsome's grandson, Coffee Wainscott, in shoveling ashes out of her fireplace and into a bucket. Coffee testified later he decided to help when Celia said she would give me 24 walnuts if I would carry the ashes out. I said good luck. Following Celia's instruction, Coffee distributed the remains of his grandfather along a path leading to the stables. The thing about being a predator and crossing boundaries is that sometimes, the sign says there's a lion in the yard and you go in and the lion rips your face off. I want to feel empathy for a middle-aged man who kept raping a person who's telling you no, but I'm still searching. So we are up now to the investigation and inquest. On the morning of the 24th, Virginia Newsome searched for her father along nearby creek banks and coves, fearing he might have drowned. By mid-morning, the search party grew to include several neighbors and Newsome's son, Harry. After fruitless hours of searching, suspicion began to turn to George, who it was thought might have been motivated to kill Newsome out of jealousy. William Powell, owner of both of slaves and adjoining 168-acre farm, questioned George. George denied any knowledge of what might have happened to Newsome, but then added suspiciously, it was not worthwhile to hunt for him anywhere except close to the house. Faced with most likely severe threats, George eventually provided an additional damning bit of information. He told Powell he believed the last walking Newsome had done was along the path, pointing to the path leading from the house to the Negro cabin. George's comment immediately led investigators to the conclusion that Newsome had been killed in Celia's cabin. Oh, George, why did you tell on her? When a search for Celia's cabin failed to turn up Newsome's body, Powell and others located Celia doing her regular duties in the kitchen of the Newsome home. Powell falsely claimed that George had told the search party that she knew where her master was, hoping this approach might prompt a quick confession from Celia. Instead, Celia denied any knowledge of her master's fate. Faced with escalating threats, including the threat of having her children taken away from her, Celia continued to insist on her innocence. She undoubtedly understood that confessing to the murder of her master would be an even more serious threat to her relationship with her children. Eventually, however, Celia admitted that Newsome had indeed visited her cabin seeking sex the previous night. She insisted that Newsome never entered her cabin, but rather she struck him as he leaned inside the window and he fell back outside, and she saw nothing more of him. Finally, after refusing for some time to tell anything more, Celia promised to tell more if Powell would send 2 men, Newsome's 2 sons, out of the room. When Harry and David left, Celia confessed to the murder of Robert Newsome. Following Celia's confession, the search party located Newsome's ashes along the path to the stables. They also gathered bits of bones from Celia's fireplace, larger bone fragments from under the hearthstone, and Newsome's burnt buckle, buttons, and blackened pocket knife. The collected items were placed in a box for display during the inquest that was to come. Acting on an affidavit filed by David Newsome, the case of State of Missouri versus Celia, a slave, commenced. Two justices of the peace, 6 local residents comprising an inquest jury, and 3 summoned witnesses all assembled at the Newsom residence on the morning of June 25th. William Powell testified first, providing the jurors with an account of his interrogation of Celia the day before. 12 years old Coffee Wayne Scott told jurors of Celia's request that he distribute what turned out to be his grandfather's ashes along the path. The third and last witness was Celia, who reaffirmed that she killed Newsom, but insisted that she did not intend to kill him, and when she struck him, but only wanted to hurt him. The inquest jury quickly determined that probable cause existed that Celia feloniously and willfully murdered Robert Newsom, and the enslaved girl was ordered to be taken to the Callaway County Jail in Fulton, 9 miles to the north of Newsom Farm. Doubts as to whether Celia would have pulled off her crime without help lingered, and Callaway County Sheriff William Sneal allowed 2 men, Jeffrey Jones and Thomas Schoutman, to conduct further questioning of Celia in her jail cell. Celia added some additional details to her original story, describing the history of rape and sexual exploitation that began soon after her arrival on the Newsom farm. But she continued to deny that George played any role in Newsom's death or the disposal of the body. So I'm going to stop here as I try to process this. It's just a mess right here, right? So yes, I'll be back with the second part, and the second part will be the final part. Thank you so much for listening.